Today is June 17th, 2013. As I talk, the G8, a forum for the governments of the world's 8th wealthiest countries, are converging close to where I live in Northern Ireland. I can't help but wonder how they would lead in a zombie apocalypse. One thing I can tell you is that State of Decay is the closest thing I've ever came to an end of the world zombie sim. But before I say anything else about the game, let me give you a really handy tip for playing it, which means you'll be allowed to save a number of times. First off, select the storage device that you have your game saved to. Now, this will work if you have a USB, or you could use cloud saving, or even a memory unit, which I have. For this example, I'm going to use my cloud storage, which is my Hotmail SkyDrive. But you can also use a USB stick, or even the Xbox 360 memory card, which I have done in the past. So for me, if you include the Xbox hard drive, then that's 4 different saves I can alternate between. Now, the next time you put the game in, you may notice this little menu that'll pop up saying multiple saves, and it can actually tell that you have those different saves, so now you just have to select which one you want to do it from, which is pretty handy too. I've been waiting for a game like this for a long time, and I'm not talking specifically about State of Decay, although I was waiting on it for a long time. What I mean is, I've been waiting for a new survival horror zombie game for ages. And this is it. Or at least this is as close as you can get with the new zombie game. I can't understand why more zombie games don't have survival elements. The zombies in this game don't give up. They'll chase you and chase you right up until your base. As a contrast, the 2 other zombie free roaming games that come out recently, Dead Island and Dead Island Riptide, the zombies will never attack your base unless prompted to as part of the game's story. But there have been several times in State of Decay where I've been followed home by a large pack of zombies, thinking that as soon as I got in the gates they would leave me alone, but actually they just attack your base, even killing some of my fellow survivors. As with everything else in this game, it can happen at random, which makes you feel always on edge, and that makes State of Decay never stale. One thing I learnt very early on is, just like in Hitman, never run, unless of course you're surrounded by zombies, and in that case, always run. But there's a real dilemma here, because just like in other survival horror games, often it's best to just run away from a threat. But in State of Decay you can only run so far before getting badly out of breath, and sometimes it's best to use that energy to fight, because of the fact that the zombies will never really stop chasing you. But being out of breath isn't just a great survival horror trait of playing as a weaker character, but it makes you play the game so much more cautiously, and makes the world more believable. This is just like the classic fight or flight that's found in nature. It takes place all the time in State of Decay, and making the wrong decision can mean a permadeath for your character, which makes the game all the more tense. You'll encounter this the most when scavenging, which almost makes looking for new items a minigame in itself, and very dangerous. Scavenging itself is very satisfying in State of Decay, but with every building you fully search, you also get the feeling that there's now a little less resources in your area. I don't always feel like I'm making my world a better place. In fact, I feel like the world is always getting worse. You have to go a little farther each time for fresh supplies, and your cars, which don't respawn, soon become less frequent throughout the map. But at the same time, I'm compelled to keep going and fight the better fight, and see how many days I can survive for. Constantly being against the odds is what makes this game so addictive. If they had made it any easier, the game would soon become stale and boring. The footage you are now seeing is just one random scavenging run I did, where I came very close to dying. Although it seems like the zombies come out of nowhere, actually the reason I got so surrounded was because I wasn't paying attention to my radar. Scavenging makes a lot of noise, especially if you're not careful. This image of the radar was taken just before I started searching the shelf. There's only one zombie and one larger zombie. The second I click on the search button, 2 more zombies spawn in, and as soon as I make a loud noise, several more zombies come in, but not only do they just spawn, they quickly move on my position. I wasn't paying attention to my radar because I was too busy focusing on the first zombie that came in, and it didn't take long for me to get overwhelmed. Let's move on to the guns. The good point about the guns are they don't use up stamina. But the bad point is noise. Just like when you scavenge, noise means more zombies. Guns are pretty much like zombie spawning devices. Every shot you take, you run the risk of more zombies spawning in. But sometimes it's your only option. This means that the guns are perfect when you've run out of stamina, but don't expect to use them like Rambo, because trust me when I tell you that it won't get you very far. There are so many small things that I don't have time to get into that make this game great, but I'm sure there are also a lot of things that people would find quite annoying about the game. Namely the other survivors running off and getting lost, and crying like little babies for you to help them. This can be particularly annoying because those characters can then die, and they could be characters that you have leveled up from playing as them earlier. There's a pretty large learning curve. In fact, most of it you just pick up as you go along. And learning is pretty much trial and error or word of mouth. Because this is a digital download game, there's no manual to look through, so most of what you pick up will either be read on forums or discovered through talking to other people who have played it. This means that you might make a lot of mistakes quite early on, which is why it's good to use the save tip I showed you at the start of the video. You can tell this game has been designed to be replayed and restarted, but sometimes having to start from scratch can be very off-putting, and make you not even want to play the game again. The first of the learning curves you might find are the controls. I was so confused with them at the start that I was accidentally throwing Molotovs just to try and bring my menu up. A question I was constantly asking myself when I started playing State of Decay was how big is the world and how much time do I really want to invest in the game? These thoughts in my head were soon silenced when I realised just how much fun the game was. I haven't played such a fun and addictive game for a long time. And if a game is fun to play, then the answer is always yes, you should invest time in playing it. After all, that's what games are all about. You would have to really hate yourself to play games that you don't find fun. And the moment you find you stop enjoying a game is the very moment you should stop playing it. The only way I can see myself stop playing this game is if I eventually get sick of having to babysit the other survivors. So there you have it, there are my thoughts on State of Decay. Where will it place on my top 10 zombie games of 2013? Well, you'll just have to wait and see.